Hello and welcome to another Student Services Info Session with UMSU. My name is Alicia Rattel, and I am a student working in the marketing department at UMSU. Also with me is our VP Community Engagement, Tino Dogo, and today we're sitting down with Spiritual Care Coordinator, Edgar French, who is here to tell us what spiritual care is all about and how to get connected with them and their community. Without further ado, please welcome Edgar French.
Thanks for having me, Tino and Alicia. It's a pleasure to be with you here. I'd love to just take a moment to share a little bit about the work that I do, give you a sense of how we support students, both one-on-one, and also the diversity of programs and workshops that we offer in the range of spiritual health and wellness. So maybe I should start with going into a discussion around what we mean by spirituality. I don't know if that might be the place to start.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I typically start there because, understandably, spirituality is a term that means many things to different people. And part of my role is to help unpack, demystify, what that means, but also with the goal of, informing students and the community more broadly that this aspect of well-being impacts all of us, regardless of, how we might see our own and embody our own spiritual wellness or practice. When we talk about spirituality, what we're really discussing is an aspect of, our humanity that seeks to find meaning to the life that we're living. There's an aspect of, an existential, capacity to really make sense of things, find our place in the world. And it touches on so many aspects of what it means to be a human being. I like to think of it as living with a compass in hand, that life, we kind of get this sense that it isn't simply about fulfilling, instincts that as creatures we have, but that life, in order for it to be lived fully, needs to have an element of cohesiveness, direction, trajectory, and purpose. And so that compass, if you will, think of it as your spiritual well-being. And again, it looks very unique from person to person. We're trying to make life worth the living, right? And as rich, as meaningful and valuable as possible. There are certain elements that we could break down to see, okay, these aspects, fall under the category of spirituality. And there are 5 major ones that, as a spiritual practitioner, we assess how they're impacted, often when students are facing challenges, losses, crises, transitions. And these involve, we've already talked about purpose, right? Making sure that you are living with an element of purpose and meaning. And what happens when that aspect of your life is impacted or, infringed in some ways. The second one is connection. We are social creatures, wired to live in community, to live with a certain element of attachment and relationship. And it's not simply connection to others, friends, family, communities, but also ourselves. So when we talk about being attuned to self and the environment, nature. And of course, we live in a day and age that is, that is at the utmost importance. So we talk about purpose, meaning, connection, and hope. Hope is a big one. All of us need some reason to get up in the morning, especially when it's hard to do so. But more seriously, living with an element of hope, faced with the reality of a precarious world, right? And not simply the kind of hope, kind of that wishful thinking, oh, I hope that, right? Or, kind of whistling in the dark, but something that really, a mindset, a posture that enhances our ability to feel in control, right? Have an element of agency in our lives. Purpose, connection, hope. The other element is transcendence. And that's often what we tend to think of when we think about spirituality. Living with a sense that we're connected to something bigger than ourselves. For some people, that involves a connection with the divine, with the sacred, with God, but for others, it isn't the case. And that's okay. Because all of us find that we are part of something larger, right? A collective of some kind, whether that is some cause or movement or aspiration that pushes us beyond our small niches, or our own little private worlds. Transcendence is important. And then finally, and probably the one I think that in this stage of life, as young adults are moving into post-secondary education and transitioning into places of profession and vocations, authenticity is probably, and it is the number one issue that I address with students, making sure that we feel comfortable in our own skins, that we feel comfortable with who we are, and we celebrate that. And so this posture of cultivating what we like to talk about as alignments, that our inner lives are correlated with our public lives, right? And that there is intention between those two, combating, that sense of imposter syndrome and so forth. So those are aspects that fall under the category of spiritual well-being. And so, but all of that looks very unique. We all have frameworks of spirituality that differ. I would even argue that if you identify with a particular faith tradition, your spirituality is going to, differ a little bit to someone else in your community. So there's diversity, there's a wideness of, distinctives as we embody this aspect of wellness. And again, it's something that impacts all of us as human beings. What else can I say? Do you want me to talk about what that looks like in terms of the support that we provide?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess our next question up on there is, what sort of services does spiritual care provide in that regard?
Yeah. So as I mentioned to you, one-on-one support, connecting with a spiritual care provider like myself. I have the pleasure of working with a number of other spiritual care providers on campus. Recently, my office used to be an office of one, but we've grown, and so I'm partnering and collaborating with other spiritual care providers who are representing particular spiritual traditions as well. So we have Indigenous elders, we have chaplains of different faiths, and we're all, the services that we provide, we seek to be as inclusive as possible, but for students who are wanting support from a particular spiritual tradition, those services are there. So in terms of what you can expect, at least in the work that I do, is conversation, engaging in attentive and reflective listening with students to begin to unpack how a particular challenge may be, again, impacting, one of those or several of those aspects of spiritual well-being. And again, we do that through conversation, really looking at being attentive to the student and to their life story, as a whole. Part of our role can also develop in terms of providing a space to process experiences. So I'll often say to students, you don't need to be in a crisis to meet with us. We have an element of flexibility simply because of the nature of our work and how we're organized. Having someone to really bounce off thoughts and ideas can be so important, to celebrate accomplishments, to nurture intentionality and well-being, or some other aspects in your lives. Spiritual care can help with that. So that tends to be, more like the one-on-one support. And I'll tell you a little bit in terms of how you can contact us and set up a time to meet. It's a lot easier when we were in person, of course. If you were wandering around the halls, you could come by and say, hey, can I meet? But nowadays, of course, we are, just encouraging students to call in advance, email, get a hold of us that way, and then we can set a time to meet. So that's, as I said, the one-on-one supports. And then there's workshops, programs that, address some aspect of spiritual well-being. One of the things that, areas that we're really keen on is the area of engagement. We're firm believers of the importance of part of it, the education process is developing yourself as a whole. So not just acquiring this knowledge that you're hoping to implement into some kind of a vocation, but really developing yourself as a human being. And some of those aspects of development involve, how do I talk to people who have different views, opinions, values than myself? So we lead gatherings for students on the topic of interfaith, where students can come from different backgrounds, worldviews, faith traditions, and get to know other students. Get to know them as an individual, get to know them in their particularity of viewpoint, and acquire skills around dialoguing, right? That helping someone really connect without the necessity to fall into a debate. And debate is important, but it doesn't work all the time. There's a place for it, but it's not a one, size fits all kind of pursuit, in my opinion. And so learning some of those skills, and building community is also part of the work that we do. A lot of my colleagues also spend, really their focus is hospitality. So some of the spiritual care providers, and we're going to get there because we just got a space that we're hoping to move in come November. We had a fire prior to the pandemic that, our offices, you might know this, damaged in the process. So, but part of the goal and the work and the service that we provide is hospitality. So having a place for students to come, hang out, mingle, and engagements, engaging in discussion too in other spiritual related topics is another, service that we provide. So interfaith workshops, we've provided workshops in the area of meaning making too in the classroom. Part of what we feel is important is to recognize that your learning experience involves some of this aspect of wellness, making sense, sorting out complex ideas, ideas that might feel contrary to your own values and beliefs. And how do you work those out? How do you find your place in that discrepancy of thought and perspective? So we've done workshops on meaning making and learning in the classroom, giving ourselves a space to really process these thoughts. This fall, a colleague and I are hoping to offer a drum circle workshop. Here's my drum. We're gonna, during Welcome Week, we're gonna be, Jesse Singer and I will be doing an impromptu drum jam that students are welcome to join us, where we'll give a little bit more information in terms of what this drum circle is gonna look like, learn a couple of skills, basic skills in drumming and hand drumming, that is, and focusing that on how it might relate to wellness, and building skills and engaging with each other as well, building community. So just to give you an example of the things that we're offering. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, wonderful. Like a well of resources and wonderful intentions behind spiritual care. That's a lot of good information.
Thank you.
Yeah. I guess we can move forward with the next question. How would students come into contact or connect with spiritual care?
So here's where I'd love to share my screen with you folks. If I can do that. Okay. Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So, the simplest bet, as I mentioned to you, is to contact us directly through this phone and connect with our office assistant, Sabina Lowen, or through the spiritual care email, and set up a time for us to meet. We try to be as flexible as we can in terms of connecting with students and what their availability is. We do operate though Monday to Fridays, from 8:30 to 4:30, and do our best to accommodate a time that works best for students. You can also check our Facebook page. We will post workshop opportunities, opportunities that are being also advertised by different stakeholders on campus. A lot of those, related to student groups, faith-based student groups. So I work very closely with some of the faith-based student groups on campus, and we do a lot of work together and provide some, elements of support. So those are the 3 ways of connecting with us at this point. We will, let me just stop here for a second. We will be on campus, myself, at the very least in some capacity, starting the beginning of the fall term. That, of course, will subject to change depending on where we're all headed. But we will definitely make students aware of when those changes do come. My office is located currently on the 3rd floor of University Center, 339B. It's kind of tucked away at the back, but we're there. And we're hoping sometime late term to move to our more established digs, and more information to come.
Wonderful. That sounds amazing. Can't wait for the new office to come together, but yeah, it's going to be great. Yeah, lots of good information about spiritual care and how students can get connected, not only with spiritual care there, but also with student clubs and whatnot, and all the support you guys provide there. Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. Tino, do you have any questions or anything to add?
Yeah, just the one for the drum circle. Edgar, will you be providing the drums, or is it bring your own drums? Yeah. Okay.
We, Tino, we had, it's a good question. So we will be providing an assortment of drums, everything from djembes, congas, cajones, and other percussive instruments. We were very fortunate that we were able to access some funds to be able to, acquire brand new instruments. So we're looking forward, for students to break those in and make some beautiful rhythms.
Amazing. That's very exciting. I'm particularly excited for that myself.
Absolutely. You're welcome to join us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll be having during Welcome Week, September 8th and 10th, between 10 and 12. Look for us on the quad. We'll be there. Just kind of, lend your ear and you'll find us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Edgar, for meeting with us and for sharing a lot about spiritual care and how students can get connected not only with their personal wellness and spiritual wellness, but also with the community. We really appreciate it.
Gotcha.
Thanks again for joining us for another Student Services Info Session with UMSU. Be sure to check out our other info session videos with the Student Counseling Center and the Indigenous Student Center. Listed here are a few of the ways that you can get connected with spiritual care at the U of M. Take care!